Welcome back, guys, to another video presentation by yours truly. So in this case, we're going to tackle the second half of our presentation. We already covered Future Perfect Simple in our previous video. If you still have doubts with that, please, I invite you to go watch the video one more time. And if after that you still have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them in our class session. All right? So in this session, we will be focusing on future perfect continuous. So let's get to it. Like I mentioned, we're going to focus on future perfect continuous. So we really need to make sure that we understand both usages, okay? The usage for future perfect simple and the use for future perfect continuous. So we can identify and use them for their own particular use, okay? Make sure we don't try and use them for different scenarios where they're not going to work out. So we're going to start with that same question. What do we use it for? This is the most common question when it comes to grammar, so make sure that you always ask yourselves this. And if you're able to answer this from any topic that you saw, then you're on the right track, okay? So here we go with our answer. We use the future perfect continuous to indicate a continuous action that will be completed at some point in the future. Okay, so note that we have a continuous action and then we have some point in the future. Okay, so with that said, let's check this first example out. We have by the time I get to the party, this is going to be the point in the future that we're talking about. Okay, and then we have our continuous action. My friends will have been dancing for 3 hours. All right. So by the time I get to the party, my friends will have been dancing for 3 hours. They got there before me. They started dancing. They didn't stop. And when I get there, they're still dancing. And it's been 3 hours from that. All right. But instead of saying all of those different sentences just to express that idea, I can join all of them together into one simple sentence, which is this one. Right. So that's when future perfect continuous is going to come in. Future perfect continuous is not the most commonly used tense in the English language, but we need to learn how to use it so we can apply it when the time comes. Okay? So here we go with another sentence. This one says next month. I'll have been studying at CETIS for 2 years. So we have our point in the future. There we go. And then we have our continuous action. Okay? Let's see another one. My dad will have been working for 20 years when he retires. So take a second, think about which one is the point in the future. If your answer is when he retires, you're 100% correct. And then our continuous action is my dad will have been working for 20 years. Okay. And then lastly, we'll have been studying English for 3 years by the time we graduate. All right. So in this case, again, take a second. Which one is it? The point of future, if you said by the time we graduate, you are 100% correct. You remember it from the last presentation, so I salute you. Very good. I want you guys to also notice that, like in the other presentation we mentioned, we can start with the time clause with the points in the future, or we can start with the future perfect, either simple or in this case continuous structure. Okay, so check it out. In the first example, we have by the time I get to the party. So in this case, we use the comma. And then on this example right here, my dad will have been working for 20 years. And then we have when he retires. Okay, so we start with the future perfect continuous. And if we do that, we don't need a comma. All right. Now, let me just highlight very quickly all of the sentences. Remember, it's always good to analyze so you guys can start making your own structure in your head before I give it to you. Okay, so analyze it and let's go. We're gonna put everything more into context with an example, okay? So this is now, and we're gonna add two different actions in the future, okay? So the first one, let's say it's 7 p.m. and I will study for 2 hours, okay? So at 7, I start studying. And then at 9 p.m., somebody's gonna call me. So she's gonna call me. So this is gonna happen until here, right? Because I said 2 hours and it's 9. So how can I join these two? these two together. Here we go. That's when future perfect continuous comes into play. I will have been studying for 2 hours by the time she calls me. All right, so we have to remember the time clause is going to go in present tense, and then we just sneak in our future perfect continuous over here. Okay, so these two actions, which kind of look like a smiley face, uh, this has been happening for 2 hours. Okay, it's still in progress when she calls me. All right, so that's when we're gonna use future perfect continuous. And like I mentioned, we can do it backwards. We can start with our point in the future by the time she calls me, and then I can add my sentence for future perfect continuous. I will have been studying for 2 hours. It does not really matter which one you want to use. Just remember to use a comma if you start with the the point in time for the future. Okay. Now this is only one of the examples because we have another one. So this when we're dealing with future perfect continuous, it does not necessarily have to start in the future as we're going to see in this example. I don't know if you guys remember the first example when we mentioned studying at SETIs. Well, most of you are not new to SETI, so you've been studying there for quite a bit now. So let's use that as an example, and also this one that we have here. I have my point in the past, okay, and then another point in the future. So let's say for the past 7 years ago, I moved to Tijuana, okay? So in this case, I still live in Tijuana, okay? So this action is gonna mean like something started in the past, but it's still present into the future, okay? So we're gonna talk about next Monday, as we can see right there. So in next Monday, it's my anniversary, my anniversary from me moving from down the south to Tijuana. Okay, so we can see right there. There we go. It started 7 years ago, and it's going to be present in the future next Monday. Okay, so on my anniversary, we can see next Monday, I will have been living in Tijuana for 7 years. An action that started in the past, me moving to Tijuana. So I've been living here for 7 years now. And then also to the future. I'm not gonna go anywhere. I'm still gonna be living in Tijuana. So that's why I can use future perfect continuous. Okay. So what is the structure? First, we have to always set our time clause. We're gonna use this one. By the time Midoriya does the exam, so there we have him. He's studying, right? So by the time Midoriya does the exam, here we go. Midoriya will have been studying for 24 hours. So he's gonna study for 24 hours. Now, in my example, I added the name Midoriya again, but if it's part of the same sentence, obviously we're gonna change it to a he, right? Because we're already using the name. But let's just do this so it's simpler for our example underneath. As you can see, we have our future and then perfect and then continuous, right? There we go. Subject, will, have, been, and then verb with ing, and then the complement. Midori will have been studying for 24 hours. Take any of the other examples, do this underneath, and it's the exact same sentence. I mean, the exact same structure for each sentence. So make sure that you do your practice with the structures. You always want to remember them. How can we make this one into negative? Think about it, and here we go. If your answer was just add won't, like in the other structure we did for future perfect simple, you're 100% correct. We just change it to won't. Nothing else changes. As we can see, we still have the have, the been, the verb with ing, and the complement. We just make this into won't. And then the other question, how do we make this into a question? Well, if your answer is like in the other video, well, you just make the switch, right? That is 100% correct. We just do that slight switch and you're going to be good to go. Will Midori have been studying for 24 hours? And we can see the structure underneath. That is the only thing that is changing. I just want to remind everyone, like I already mentioned, We cannot have one without the other. We normally don't leave these sentences just to stand alone. We always add another clause so it makes sense. Okay, so here we go. Let's continue to the next slide so we can further analyze that. Here is what I mean. So we have our time clause, which, like we mentioned, is going to be in the present tense. By the time I get to the party, this is one of our previous examples. And then we need now our sentence for future perfect continuous. My friends will have been dancing for 3 hours. Okay. So you can't just say one without the other. If I just say this, it's an incomplete idea. And if I just say this, again, it does not make that much sense without the full, complete, like a time reference, right? My time clause. Because if I just go up to you and I say, my friends will have been dancing for 3 hours, yeah. And what? And what else? What do you want to add? So, yeah, just keep that in mind always. And here we have another example. When my dad retires, our time clause, he will have been working for 20 years. By the time we graduate, we'll have been studying English for 3 years. And then by the time she calls me, I will have been studying for 2 hours. All right, so just remember the time reference, if you're using an action, is going to stay in the present, as we can see right there: calls, graduate, retires, and gets. So it's very important that you always remember if we need to add an s or not. Okay, remember he, she, it's. Some cases we do, and some cases we don't. Okay, but in this case, yes, we do, because we're talking about she. All right. So make sure you write down all your questions so you can ask me in the classroom. And for homework, we're going to do another mind map or concept map. You guys decide. Remember, we have to answer our basic questions. What do we express with the topic? Make sure that you know the structures and you write them down, and also be able to make your own examples. Okay. So from me, guys, that's gonna be it. I thank you for paying so much attention. I'm sorry for making the video a bit too long. Maybe I'll try and work on the length. Here are some sources in case you want to check them out. But like I said, thank you, and I'll see you in class next time. All right. Take care and peace.